The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s stands as one of the most significant chapters in American history, representing a determined struggle for racial equality and justice. Rooted in the long history of African American resistance to oppression, this movement sought to dismantle institutionalized racism, segregation, and discrimination that had persisted since the end of slavery. The decade was marked by powerful leaders, landmark events, and transformative legislation, all working in concert to challenge the status quo and push the nation toward a more equitable society. One of the pivotal figures in this movement was Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister whose philosophy of nonviolent resistance drew inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi and Christian teachings. King rose to prominence during the Montgomery Bus Boycott of 1955 to 1956, which began when Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat to a white man. This boycott lasted over a year and demonstrated the power of collective action, ultimately leading to a Supreme Court ruling that deemed segregation on public buses unconstitutional. King's eloquent speeches and steadfast commitment to nonviolence galvanized support and set the stage for a broader movement. As the movement gained momentum, other influential leaders emerged, each contributing unique perspectives and strategies. Malcolm X, for example, advocated for black empowerment and self-defense. He critiqued the mainstream civil rights movement's emphasis on integration, arguing instead for racial pride and independence. Through his work with the Nation of Islam, and later as a more independent activist, Malcolm X's message resonated with many African Americans seeking to assert their identity and challenge systemic oppression. His assassination in 1965 marked a turning point, highlighting the deep divisions within the movement and the urgent need for continued activism. The civil rights movement was characterized by a series of landmark events that captured national attention and inspired action. One of the most significant was the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963. This massive demonstration drew over 250,000 participants and featured King's iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, calling for an end to racism and economic injustice. The march not only emphasized the demands for civil and economic rights but also showcased the movement's diverse coalition, uniting individuals from various backgrounds in pursuit of a common goal. In the aftermath of the March on Washington, the movement achieved significant legislative victories. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a landmark piece of legislation that prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It outlawed segregation in schools, employment, and public accommodations, fundamentally reshaping American society. This monumental achievement was a direct result of years of activism, protests, and the unwavering resolve of countless individuals who fought for justice. Another crucial moment came with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which aimed to eliminate barriers to voting for African Americans, particularly in the South. The act followed a brutal confrontation known as Bloody Sunday, when civil rights marchers were violently attacked by law enforcement while attempting to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. This shocking display of brutality was captured by the media, igniting widespread outrage and mobilizing support for voting rights. The passage of the Voting Rights Act marked a significant victory for the movement, ensuring greater access to the ballot box for millions of African Americans. Throughout the 1960s, the civil rights movement also faced challenges and resistance, both from within and outside the movement. The emergence of groups like the Black Panther Party highlighted a growing frustration with the slow pace of change and the persistent violence against black communities. The Panthers advocated for armed self-defense, community programs, and a more militant approach to achieving racial equality. This shift represented a divergence in strategies within the broader movement, emphasizing the complexity and diversity of thought among activists. As the movement progressed, the assassination of key leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, dealt devastating blows to the struggle for civil rights. King's death sparked nationwide riots and an outpouring of grief, underscoring the fragility of the progress that had been made. Yet, his legacy continued to inspire future generations of activists who carried forward the fight for justice and equality. The civil rights movement laid the groundwork for subsequent social justice movements, influencing the feminist movement, LGBTQ+ rights, and other advocacy efforts. Its legacy is reflected in ongoing struggles for racial justice, equality, and the fight against systemic racism in contemporary society. Today, the movement is commemorated in various ways, from memorials to educational programs, ensuring that the lessons learned and sacrifices made are not forgotten. In conclusion, the civil rights movement was a transformative period that reshaped American society and advanced the cause of racial equality. Through the leadership of figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and the courage of countless activists, the movement made significant strides in dismantling segregation and discrimination. The landmark events and legislation that emerged during this era continue to resonate today, reminding us of the ongoing struggle for justice and the enduring power of collective action in the pursuit of equality.